Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video on the weaknesses of every single champion. Now, this is actually going to be a part 2. If you want to check out the part 1, I'm going to pin a comment. If you want to go through, I think, what is it? Ada, like fucking Lissandra. So it's that list of champions. So we're going to be starting off on, what's the first champion? So we're going to be starting on Master Yi. So we're going to be going Master Yi to Zyra on this video. My name is LolFit. I do educational content. I do guides videos. I do tip videos. I do opposition reports where I just do a huge video on one specific champion and how to beat it. If you want to check those out. If you like this kind of content, I think I have one right now on Yasuo, Zed, and Urgot right now, so you can check those out as well. And if you want to know a little bit about my background, I've peaked at Diamond 4, so it's not going to be the highest level analysis, but it should be able to give you a good amount of knowledge. Now, the reason I created this series is because I wanted to give you guys a long format video to kind of just listen in the background while you're doing other stuff. When I listen to and watch YouTube, I just kind of have it on the background a lot of the time while I'm doing other stuff, so I kind of wanted to make a video that I would personally enjoy and like to see myself. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So we're going to be going over Master Yi first. Let's find him. So, some of Master Yi's weaknesses are going to be really good team cohesion and ability to focus him when he goes in. So things like CC are going to be very good against him. The reason why Master Yi does really well in low elo solo queue is because people don't understand that you really need to CC him and kind of save a lot of your abilities for him. He's very susceptible to bursts when he does not have his W up, and he can actually be snowballed on quite easily pretty early. He's not the best duelist before he gets items. He really needs to kind of free farm for a bit, so look to take advantage of his weakness in the early game. Try and secure as many scuttles as you can against him, and really try and get him out of the game and close the game before he gets into that crazy kind of damage mode in the late game. So that will wrap up Mr. Yi. Next up we have Miss Fortune. Now she has her defensiveness really relies on her movement speed and then also slowing you down. One thing that I don't think a lot of people know is actually her strut, which is where she gets a lot of her base movement speed, is going to be taken away when she takes damage. And also she is going to have probably 1, maybe 2 reactivations in a team fight, and you just got to damage her in some way to give her that slowdown again. Also, we need to look to take advantage of her ult, how it CCs herself, and it's going to be a very easy target to throw like skill shots at. Next up, she has very low consistent damage, particularly when she's only autoing one target because her love tap needs to be switched kind of on and off. She's going to be looking for burst trades against you, and you should look for consistent damage trades that are lasting a long time against her. And then also in the laning phase, she is exceedingly mana hungry, particularly with her E being like 70 or 80 mana at level 1, because that ability has been nerfed so many goddamn times. So look to take advantage of her when she has very low mana, because she's really relying on that to do her damage. And next up we have Mr. Mordekaiser. So he is quite susceptible to burst. He is going to have a bit of a shield, but he needs to be close to you to proc his W to give you the healing. He's pretty weak pre-6. He can be poked out quite easily because he is melee range. After all, he just has that little bit of a range extender with his E. He's extremely cooldown reliant. If you see him using abilities to just kind of push your wave in, look to take all-ins on him because he does very little damage without his cooldowns. Also, a little bit of a trick that some Mordekaiser mains use is when they get really low health, they look to W and kind of just life steal off of the jungle minions, so you can look to ward some of those waves. And if you see him kind of bounce out of the lane for a little bit and he's at low health, he might be looking to steal a little bit of health away from minions, so make sure to maybe get a catch on him or try and ward that out. Next up, he has an extremely low range in team fights and can be kited quite easily, so look to use your CC abilities when he is trying to get on top of you. Alright, and next we have Morgana. Now, she has an exceedingly long cooldown on a lot of her abilities. Her Q and her E. Her E in particular is an extremely long cooldown, so if you can bait that out, that's going to be very beneficial. Try and bait it out before you go in and all in the 2v2 in the bot lane. Her Her W is going to be reduced a bit if it hits cannons or champions, so keep that in mind. And her Q it's going to take a while for her to get up, so you should think about Morgana when you're fighting her in lane. She has extremely low threat when she has her Q down, because that's pretty much almost all of her damage in the early game, because you can just run out of her W and she won't get that consistent tick on you. Next up, her when she's a support, she's going to have very low values on her shield, so you can always look to just kind of burst through the shield and then throw out your CC. You would want to throw your Q first on something like RE to take it out, and then you would want to throw your E charm to get the guaranteed CC. Also, she has an exceedingly low auto attack range. If she's looking to auto attack you, it's going to put her in a very precarious spot, so take advantage of that. And she's one of those squishies that need a dive to make full advantage of her kit to ult several people. It's also a kind of she does put a slow on you when you ult, but just save your mobility to get out of the ring and to not get stunned by her. Next up, we have Nami. So she is actually quite mana hungry with her W spam if she's looking to just bully you a lot. She is very squishy as well, but she does make up for that for sustain. So what she wants to do is take very quick trades where she trades her W and maybe an auto that's enhanced by her E, and then get out and just kind of get the heal bounce back with her W. How you take advantage of that kind of playstyle is look for more consistent trades where she's not going to be able to just always have a W up from when you're trading. With this play pattern, also it's going to be lend her to a very particular spot and a very like you know exactly where she's going to throw her W out, because she's always going to want to throw it at max range. So look to throw abilities right where she is going to be throwing out that W. Also, she is going to look to chase you down with bubble, and if she misses that bubble, she is really, really screwed. So sometimes look to be like feign running away, and then when she throws out her bubble, a little bit of a cast animation, just turn around and get on top of her. She loses a lot of threat when she doesn't have her bubble up. Next up, we have a extremely loud ult sound when she is about to do it. She like yells. I don't want to imitate it and look like a fool, but it's a very large or loud sound, and it's a very obvious animation when she's about to throw out her wave. So always look to do that, and it's pretty slow moving, so you are able to sidestep it when possible. And that will wrap up Nami. Next up, we have the Doge. We have Mr. Nasus. He got a buff where he has even more lifesteal in the early game. If you want to look to duel him, two things you're really going to need to duel him is healing reduction, and you're going to need ninja tabbies. Outside of that, he's going to be a decent duelist after he gets a couple stacks and level 6. Next up, he is very, very weak, particularly pre-6. If you're a jungler, you should look to gank him as much as possible. There's nothing worse than a Nasus that's behind and has to go into melee range to fight. He is very easily kited away from in team fights and focused down. He has very little tankiness outside of his ult that just gives him increased health. So just look to take advantage of that. He doesn't have any mobility. He just has a wither. He can slow someone and chase them down and bop him over the head with the cane. But if you're able to stun, if you're able to snare him, it just really fucks with what he's trying to do. That's why you always see Nasus players try and get Merc Treads or the Legend Tenacity to lessen the CC that is going to be placed on him. And last up for this row, we have Mr. Nautilus. So he has extremely long cooldowns. So he has a lot of threat when his Q's up, obviously, and his W is going to give him a lot of tankiness. But if he misses his Q, he's going to lose a lot of his trading potential, and he can be kited out very easily. So treat him a bit like Blitzcrank. You know, when Blitzcrank throws out his Q, when he doesn't have his Q, he's one of the lowest threat supports. When he does have Q, he is one of the highest threat supports. So look to take advantage of his cooldown windows. Next up, his tankiness revolves completely around his shield, particularly when he's a support and on low econ. He is extremely squishy without his shield up, so you can look to burst him out, and he is usually going to be on the front line just because that's where he's going to be looking to throw out his hooks. Next up, you can actually duck behind walls and towers to stop the hook. Similar to minions, this is the only one of the hook supports that you can actually hide behind walls, with Thresh, Blitz, and Pyke being able to they can still throw their hooks over the wall. And obviously You're going to want to approach your playstyle a bit differently when he is a tank in the top lane. He is going to be a lot tankier, but when he's a support, he's going to be very squishy. So look to take advantage of the support Nautilus as much as possible, because he will not be as tanky as you are used to. And that will wrap up Nautilus. All right, and let's jump right into the next row. First up, we have the snowballing kitty out of the jungle. We have Nidalee right here. So she really needs to snowball early to be very effective, and she's going to look to do this with a lot of ganks. She is an exceedingly squishy diver, so when she looks to jump in and burst down people, you can really look to take advantage of that, as she is going to be in a very predictable place just right next to the champion that she's attacking. So look to save your burst, not when she's kind of floating around looking to throw in the Q and looking to jump in, but save your cooldowns and your burst for when she's jumping in and looking to take down an opponent. And that will lead her to a very predictable movement pattern when she is looking to get into melee range. Obviously want to take advantage of that. And then I want to talk about something that maybe a little bit different than some of the other tips I'm giving to the champion, because I think one of the heaviest counters to Nidalee is Poppy. If you ever see Poppy and you have any, or if you ever see Nidalee and if you have any experience on Poppy as a jungler, look to take advantage of this. You're going to be able to outduel her at any point after level 3 due to your stop of her leap and your ability to throw her into walls, and you're able to burst her out because you have a high level of base damage, and you're able to almost completely just counter what she is trying to do. Your counter ganks are going to be huge against her, and it really stunts what she's trying to do. Obviously, if you're able to take advantage of her predictable ganking patterns, because all she's going to be looking to do is gank, try and track her as much as possible for counter ganking situations. And then also, if you can just get into the late game, usually Nidalee is going to fall off quite hard. I would say even harder than a champion like Lee Sin. So let's get into the next champion. We have Mr. Nocturne. So he's another one of those champions similar to Nidalee that really has to snowball early and get off some good ganks. One thing you really need to stay away from, though, is his early dueling potential when he has lethal tempo, celerity, and water walking, and you're fighting him over scuttlers. This is really where he's going to pick up a lot of his early game kills. He gets a lot of movement speed on a frightened target after he terrifies them, and also with the water walking and the celerity combo, this is just an insane amount of damage. So really just don't fight him in that situation and don't allow him to snowball on you. So he only has one defensive ability. Outside of it, he is extremely squishy. So if you can look to try and bait out a spell shield with a different spell that isn't your main damage spell, that would be the best way to approach it. What you want to do with a fed Nocturne is try and bait in his ults and get him to trade 1-for-1, because this is usually what's going to happen in the late game. He just ults in, kills your highest priority squishy, and then you're going to kill him. So he's not going to be the best champion if he gets a shitload of kills on him. What you do need to be careful with if you are a split pushing champion is get someone to shadow you, because he is going to be looking to ult the person that's all by himself. That's where he really shines, in those small skirmish situations, and he's going to struggle a bit more in team fights. So team fight as much as possible, group as much as possible, and protect each other when possible. And if you see a very obvious Nocturne ult that's going to be coming in, you can even look to preemptively teleport when it's coming. If you see a top laner coming to gank you, or coming to fight you, and you're really far ahead of him, ping someone to come over to you and look to help to assist the kind of situation that Nocturne is really looking for. And he's going to be very squishy and be in a very predictable area when he is looking to just melee attack the target. So that will wrap up Mr. Nocturne, and we have Nunu next. So the way Nunu's snowball works is the turning radius. The more he is turning, the more like he kind of winds it up and is moving like in a circular rotation, or the more he's kind of turning it one way or the other, the more of a turning radius he's going to get with the snowball. So just keep that in mind. You can also bait him into very poor spots with his snowball, because a lot of low elo Nunus are really just going to look to hit that snowball at any cost possible. If you if you can just get him into a spot really deep in the lane and you're getting a counter gank, that can really be turned around quite easy, because Nunu does have a very low amount of damage in the early game. Another way you can counter Nunu and a weakness of his is if you have a ward deep down mid lane and you're just kind of team fighting during the lane phase, or not the lane phase, during the team fight phase at the end of the game, you can really spot out when they're looking to engage. So look to do those deep wards down the lane where he's usually going to be starting his snowball, and then kind of look at what he's building. Is he a squishy AP? Is he going that predator build? Look to take advantage and burst him out of that. Or if he's a low damage and a tank, you can kind of ignore him and sometimes focus on the squishies a bit more. And also, he is a bit weaker early, so if you take a dueling jungler like Xin Zhao, Kindred, Graves, you can really look to bully him quite hard and take some of his camps, or try and duel him in his jungle, and you usually will be successful unless you get outplayed pretty hard. So that will wrap up Nunu. And what do we got next here? We have Olaf. So Olaf relies on being very relevant in the early game and mid game. He likes to snowball a bit, get those early kills. So try and play around that a bit, or take a jungler that can possibly duel him as well. Things like Kindred can be really good into him because she's able to kind of dash over walls, and that's the only way to get away from an Olaf. Is by terrain, so things like Graves and Kindred that can hop over walls are going to be pretty good at kiting him out and dueling him. So he can be bursted down very hard in late game because he's going to be looking to turn on his R, which reduces his resistances, and just run at your carries and kind of run through your tanks. So if everyone turns and just focuses on the Olaf first, he's going to usually be putting himself in a poor situation to burst out that squishy. Next up, baiting out bad axe locations can be very good if you're kind of if you are laning against him, or if you see him and you're able to get a long distance axe where he's going to have to run very far to pick it up, you can look to take advantage of him, because he's going to lose a lot of his damage. Obviously, very predictable movement patterns. I haven't seen a single Olaf that doesn't just run in a fucking straight line when he's looking to engage in team fights, so always keep that in mind. And then also, a little bit of HP is going to go a long way, because when he is a tanky Olaf, he's going to rely, a lot of his damage is just going to be on that reckless swing. That is a base damage, and it's just base amount of true damage. It's not percentage health or anything crazy like that. So a good amount of health is going to prevent a bit of what the tanky Olaf is trying to do. And next up, we have Orianna, the one that's getting the victorious skin. I'm excited about Orianna. So she has a pretty large or loud sounding trigger when she's ulting, and you can obviously flash away when you see it being activated. Just look to be very cognizant of ball placement. Don't let it just kind of sneak into your back line, or she leaves it and you guys run over the ball chasing people. That is a big no-no. That is the equivalent of chasing a singed. It is a very poor thing to do, to chase over Orianna's balls, because she can get a huge ult. She is a mid-range mage, so she is also pretty susceptible to poke, and you need to look to take advantage of the cooldowns that are provided by her shield. If she uses her shield, you can look to burst after that. And keep in mind that her ball is tethered to her, and she sometimes has to move forward if she wants to throw it out. So look to kind of suss out how far how close she needs to the ball to throw it out, and kind of keep that in your mind when you're looking to trade against her. She is weaker earlier. Her ult isn't going to be doing that much. She usually likes getting 2 or 3 items before team fighting, so she is pretty weak before that. She has a decent amount of consistent trading power with her enhanced autos in the laning phase, so sometimes burst trades are going to be better than consistent trades against her if you have poor auto attacks yourself. And look for spell usage on waves. Oriannas are actually particularly pretty bad at this, because you're going to be using to push their Q and W to push in waves a lot. Look to take advantage of that window. I know I've been using this tip a lot, but it's a really good tip to be doing against a lot of champions that are ability based, that aren't just like right click to win champions. When she's using her Q and W to go on the wave, if you see both of those spells used, she has very little recourse if you jump on her, so look to jump on her when that happens. And next up, we have Ornn. So he has actually very long cooldowns now. In the early game, he took a couple nerfs, and those were to his early game cooldowns, particularly on his W that provides a lot of tankiness. He is extremely mana hungry, so if you're able to bait out his abilities, that's going to be really good by just kind of standing at the max range of his Q and just kind of sidestepping his W when he throws that out. stay away from walls at all costs. This is a really big thing because he's able to do it's actually a decent amount of damage on his E, and then also he's going to get a knock-up. So you need to treat him similar to Vayne, how much damage and how much more of a combo he'll get on you when you are near walls and near his little Q pillar. So really respect that, and it shouldn't be the worst matchup for you. And one really big thing you can do against Ornn is to CC him when he's looking to reactivate on his ram. He calls it the big loud horn sounds, and then he's going to smash it in a way and stun them. But if you can stun him before he is able to smash the ram back, this is going to be a huge way to do it. Also, things like Wind Wall, Brahm's Wall, Poppy's W can stop the alt reactivation and are going to be very strong picks them. And then also one thing they nerfed, I think they kind of went a little bit under the radar that a lot of people don't understand, is the brittle debuff duration. The thing that's like a little circle above you that gives him a knock-up if he hits you. It's actually been lowered by like 2 seconds, so look to kind of kite him out a little bit. Don't take an auto trade when you have that brittle debuff up, because it's usually going to allow him to win the trade. All right. And next up, we have Pantheon. So everyone knows early gamer line. He really needs a snowball in the early game to do well. So take a champion that you're comfortable with. Don't take an extremely squishy champion that needs to scale into him, because he will crush you and snowball the game. He is very easily bursted out. He goes a heavy damage build early, so in those early team fights and skirmishes, you can look to burst him out. He's very mana hungry, and sometimes he will even pop his corrupting potions if he's at full health but just wants some mana out of it, so you can look to bait out that. A lot of the times the laning phase go is if you're able to, like, if you have a Riven E shield, or if you have an Ornn W shield, if you have any kind of sustain, look to pop it after he uses his Q and just wear down that mana bar he has, because he is very weak without any mana. Also, one big thing that I think a lot of people don't really take advantage of is your level 6 power spike. He doesn't have an ult that he can use in a 1v1, and you are probably going to have one, so look to take advantage of your level 6 power spike into the Pantheon. And when he is throwing out his combo, usually he's going to be standing in one place because he is stunning you. So if you're a skill shot champion, just throw everything after he throws his W jump, because he's usually going to W and then auto and then Q and then E or whatever, so he's going to be standing still. So wait for him to kind of do his combo of being all in, and then throw all of your skill shots on him then. And that will wrap up Pantheon. Alright, and let's get into the next row. We are going to get into Poppy. So, one thing people I don't think understand too much is, I think the people that are painfully aware of this are the ones that play Poppy. So she is actually a very low base health champion, and takes her a while to get a decent health pool, so true damage is going to be extremely effective against her. How she kind of supplements this is with high resistances out of her W, and then a shield out of her passive. So look to take advantage of this if you have any true damage in your kit, or a true damage champion in your champion pool. Don't get baited out by the W passive under the tower. This is going to be another big thing. The W passive, it doubles the resistances she gets from this when she is at low health, so she is extremely tanky the more damage she is. So make sure if you do have a lot of burst, you might want to save it kind of for the tail end of the fight. She is one of those champions you just need to stay away from walls. She is going to be able to get a double proc on her Q, which is a shitload of base damage, and then also it's going to double up her E damage, so staying away from walls is going to be a huge part of fighting Poppy, and it's going to be how she's going to look to engage on you in team fights. Usually she's going to be very strong in the jungle, so make sure you're approaching by the correct angles where she doesn't have a clear shot of just throwing you into a wall and bursting you out. And then one big thing that you can look to do is to CC her when she is looking to charge up her hammer. It takes her a while to get a max range hammer kind of charge up, so she is really capable. You're able to stun her very quickly. You can silence her, you can cast it in Q her. There's a bunch of stuff you can do to stop Poppy's ult, and it is very impactful during the team fights if done correctly, so stopping that can be a huge part in winning the team fights. Next up, we have Pyke. So Pyke is pretty squishy. He cannot add to his base HP pool, and he is extremely susceptible to CC. He is like any other assassin. If you're able to CC him and burst him out, he is going to be he's just going to be a liability as opposed to like a very like a resource for the team, I guess is the way to put it. Mobility and reset of the a reset denial of his ult is going to be very big as well. If you have any mobility spell in your really low health and he's looking to execute, you see the X coming down, save your mobility or dash for then, and he will not get a kill on his ult, and he will not get a reset and just be able to destroy the rest of your team. So save your mobility, save your flash for that moment, so he cannot finish you off. Next thing I want to go over. So he's pretty easy to execute in lane, pretty easy to execute like in the early team fights when everyone's pretty squishy. But in those late game team fights where there's a lot of guardian angels, there's zonias, there's shields, there's a bunch of stuff, he's going to struggle a little bit more. So sometimes just dragging out the game a bit and kind of not having to deal with the snowballed Pyke with a shitload of gold because he shares the kill gold with everyone can be a viable strategy against him. Also, warding out the bushes will deny him his healing from his passive, and he will have to run out even more or have to use his W to get the healing back from his gray health. And one thing I want to talk about with him is Morgana is an extremely hard counter. She's able to provide a lot of CC through her Q, so that's really good against assassins. Then also she's able to black shield the stun and the hook, and then also she's able to see Pyke in his W form with her ult and able to slow him down and even guarantee a Q. So if you have Morgana in your champion pool at all and you see a Pyke locked in, try out the Morgana matchup, because I think that is a very, very easy kind of exploitive lane that you can look to take advantage of. And next up we have Quinn. There we go. So she is a very lower ranged ADC. She's not like the lowest range ADC, so you can look to take advantage of that. She is very in need of snowball early to take full advantage of it, and she's regularly going to be in the top, and mid lane she's going to be building like lethality type items, and then if she's going to be going down the ADC role, sometimes she goes kind of the traditional ADC role. She's going to scale a lot better with the kind of traditional ADC, but she's going to have more snowball potential with the lethality. So kind of know where she's looking, keep an eye on what she is building. She very commonly is diving in, so you can wait to look to burst her. The best time to look to burst Quinn is when she is throwing her E out on one of your allies. She's going to go the same amount of distance every time back, and you can just throw your abilities right where she is launching herself back to. Sometimes a really great way to get kills on Quinn is to shadow your split pushers, because she really wants to get that like juicy ADC that's just farming by themselves, pushing out a wave. If you're just kind of shadowing them out of the jungle, you can look for an easy 2v1, because she is like any other assassin. If she sees someone alone that she is stronger than, she's going to look to take advantage, and with her movement speed, she's going to be moving very quickly towards that target. So look to kind of bait her out into those poor situations where she might be overextending a bit. Next up, we have Rakan. So he is a very squishy diver. There's a reason why people or pro play, they're starting to take things like Leona that can just kind of CC him down and burst him while he's looking to jump in and engage. He is very, very hard countered by CC, so if you have a CC heavy support for him, that's going to be the best way to approach it. He has a very predictable poke with his Q harass. He has to be actually pretty close to you. It's a pretty short range, so you can look to return a little bit of damage on him when he's looking to poke with his Q. He also can bait himself pretty hard with his W when he's all in. If his ADC is very far and he doesn't have a target to E back to, he is very squishy. If you just sidestep his W, you can take full advantage of his kind of... If he's not hitting his W, it's going to be a very poor all-in for you, so always look to turn on him when he misses his W. He's also very ult-reliant for a safe engage, so if he doesn't have his ult up, he has very little threat, so keep that in mind. Next up, we have Rammus. So the Powerball. Everyone knows Rammus. He runs. He goes like super fast. He goes like into a fucking ball, and he moves super fast. So the ways you can look to take advantage of this is it's actually a decent amount of damage that's going to be coming out of that Q, and how you can dodge it is just by running around the minions on the other side of it, because he cannot go through the minions with his Q movement speed. So denying that Q can sometimes be enough to escape his ganks. He is a very weak dueling champion compared to some of the meta junglers, so invading him or denying him farm can be very effective. He is a very classic solo queue overdiver. Sometimes if you're able to bait him very deep into your lines when you're team fighting, if you're one of the squishies he's targeting, try and get as far away as possible and bring him as deep into your team as possible when he is chasing you down. He doesn't have the quickest clear speed inside of the jungle. He can do AoE camps pretty well, but he's going to struggle a little bit in the single target camps. Kiting is going to be very big, and also similar to the first tip I gave with him, if you bodyguard the Rammus away from your carries, it's going to be very important. If you're something like a Braum, Nautilus, or like a tanky top lane, or just getting in front of him when he's trying to powerball and stopping him from queuing into a backline carry and taunting him is going to be very big and a great way to deal with Rammus. So next up we have Rek'Sai, and she is an extremely squishy frontliner. She doesn't have any ability that's going to provide her tankiness. She just has a lot of damage, and people build her a little bit bruisery. She can be out-dueled pretty easily in the early game by champions if she doesn't get a knock-up. And then also she's going to be out-tanked. This is why she's not seeing too much play, because they've nerfed her. I think she's gotten nerf on base AD and base armor, that she's really at a point where she's struggling a bit. You're probably not going to see Rek'Sai too much, but when you do, just make sure you know that she's pretty squishy and she does a mediocre amount of damage. So look to duel her as much as possible if you guys are both in an even state. And then also one thing you can look to do with Rek'Sai is just standing still. She won't get the tremor sense, and she will not be able to see you, as she has a very limited line of sight. If you want to just check out what it looks like, you can just YouTube Rek'Sai as well. Very predictable movement. She's going to look to just sense where you're going, and then she's going to burrow and then knock you up. So you just look to take advantage of that. And then also warding out her routes. She has very special gank routes that she can do. She can burrow under terrain and come out the other side. So make sure you're putting wards in places where she is going to look to do that. And that will wrap up Rek'Sai. And last in this row we have Renekton. So he snowballs very hard early. He's one of the best early dueling top laners. There's only a few top laners that can deal with him pretty well in the top lane. He's very heavy in single target damage. He can do a bit of AoE damage with his E and his Q, but you have to be very clumped on top of him, on top of each other for him to do an AoE damage. Pre-6, he is very squishy because he's not going to have access to that huge amount of base health in the early game, so you can look to gank him before 6. He is very good at 2v1ing though at level 6. He's kind of like that Alawi, that Darius that can look to turn 2v1s if the jungler is a pretty squishy and weak level 6 champion. He also must access the minion wave to get his sustain. So if you are bullying, if you're managing to beat him in lane, deny him access to the minions unless he obviously is under tower and you have to like take a tower shot to deny it, and you'll be able to stop that insane amount of healing he gets off of his Q. So he is actually very squishy and item reliant for taking this, particularly in the late game where the only thing that he's getting out of his kit is extra bonus health, which isn't really too much in the late game with all the percentage health damaging abilities we have nowadays. So if the Renekton is diving in and maybe a little bit ahead of his teammates, look to just turn and burn the Renekton. And that will wrap that row up. Alright, let's get into everyone's favorite jungler to go against, Rengar. So, he's very snowball reliant. He needs to get a couple early kills to be in a very oppressive state. So if you're able to play safe laners, that is usually a good idea. Another thing that you need to look at is actually he has a large amount of healing he's going to get from his double W if he's using his empowered ability in that way. So healing reduction is going to be really good, and burst prevention. Things like exhaust, if you're a bruiser, is going to be really nice. Maybe some ninja tabbies. stopping his burst and his all-in is going to really help you a lot in the team fights, whether it's Zonia's or... You guys get the idea. This is going to really nullify a lot what he is going to be trying to do with his kit, and it's going to be very predictable when he's ulting in, that you can look to kind of protect the person that he's ulting. So grouping up is going to be a very good way also to counter Rengar. And then obviously staying away from bushes. This is going to make him have very little mobility. The way he's going to be able to get a lot of kills if he's going to chase you down in the jungle where there's a bunch of bushes around to jump on you from. So staying away from the bushes is often a good thing to do. Next up, even if he's snowballed in the late game, he's going to struggle a bit to trade more for more than just one champion, unless he's insanely far ahead and built a little bit more burst resistant and bruisery. So if you can sometimes drag out games, Rengar is going to struggle a bit in the team fights, as he really excels in dueling and the 1v1s or a 2v2 situation. Next up, we have a Riven. So she is very snowball reliant in the early game. If you can deny her early kills, she's really not going to have the oomph that she needs to carry team fights really hard. She's a very squishy diver, so she's going to be on the front lines, and she's going to take a lot of damage outside of her shield. Make sure to keep an eye on her shield, because that is a lot of damage prevention that she gets from it. And also, one thing that you should really keep in mind when you're checking out Riven and when you're looking to duel Riven is sometimes they're going to go really heavy tank. Maybe they go like Black Cleaver, and then maybe Sterix and Titanic Hydra, and then just like a really tanky bruiser build. Or sometimes they go a very sustainy build. They go like Death to Dance and Ravenous Hydra. So look to kind of build against it accordingly. If it's very sustain heavy, you're definitely going to want healing reduction. Obviously, Ninja Tabbies are going to be big, and do not clump in team fights. Everyone has seen those box montages of him just flashing in and getting a 5-man stun and ulting everyone. So do not point into her hand by grouping up. Next up, we have Rumble. So he's very snowball reliant as well. He's going to be a really strong early and mid game champion. So if you're able to deny early kills, that's going to be very good. Also, look to take advantage of the squishiness. He is he's going to be a frontliner for the most part. He just has his one long range ability with his ult and a medium range ability with his E. But a lot of his damage comes out of his Q, so when he's looking to come in with his Q, you can burst him out. Keep an eye on his bar. He's not going to be being able to do any abilities when he's overheated and the bar is full and red. He has a lot of power around objectives and a lot of zone control, so you don't really want to fight around in the jungles or in a really condensed space. You don't want to go too deep into the Baron Pit or the Dragon Pit, because he's able to just get a huge ult off there, so sometimes baiting that out is going to be good. And the shield is a relatively longer cooldown, and that's where a lot of his tankiness comes from, so trade around it. Don't throw your burst into the shield, as it doesn't last too long. And that will wrap up Rumble. Next up, we have Ryze. So just as a general rule of thumb, he's a mid-range mage, so he's going to struggle against long-range mages that are able to poke him out. Something like Vel'Koz would be very good into it. He's very combo-reliant in what he is trying to do, so if you're able to kind of get out of range when he's looking to combo on you, that's going to be a very good way. He is very mana hungry in the early game before he gets his tier stacking, or before if he goes going the tier rod. He's going to be very mana hungry. Look to take advantage of him when he has low mana, because he's fairly useless without it. Baiting out, this is actually kind of, it's a little bit what I've found. I'm not 100% sure on this, but it feels like if you're able to bait out his combo and his passive and his phase rush before the gank comes, if you just look to take a bad trade against him, that's almost all of his mobility. Baiting that out before a jungler comes to gank is going to be very huge, because that's like taking away a Zed's like W shadow in his mobility. So always look to try and bait that out beforehand. He is going to be at mid-range, and he is pretty squishy, so look to take advantage of that. And then also we have CC on his ult. When he's looking to ult out, just CC him. Save your ability for your CC ability for when he is ulting out, as damage I don't think will cancel it. Next up we have Sejuani. Where is the Sejuani? There she is. So she is a very, very tanky champion. She is the tankiest champion when she has her passive up. She gets a huge amount of base armor and magic resist at the start of every fight, and it wears off within like a second or two, so do not throw out all your burst right when she still has her ice armor up. Next up, we have, she is an HP stacking champion. She usually goes something like Cinderhulk and sometimes straight into Warmog. So percentage HP, damage, abilities, and champions are going to be very effective. She can be outdueled early by strong dueling champions like Xin Zhao, Kindred, Graves, and champions like that. And then also a particular thing with Sejuani is if you're Trundle, you can steal her huge amount of resistances she gets from her passive. So if you steal right at the start of the team fight, when she hasn't been damaged yet, you're going to be an extremely tanky troll. And then she has an extremely loud ult noise and kind of like a wind up, so just make sure to sidestep that when it's coming out, and keeping a fucking ear out for that shit, because of that ult can really screw you over in team fights. Next up, we have Shaco. So he is a really squishy, and he's going to be a frontliner. So he's an assassin, so he's going to be very susceptible to CC. You can also follow him with a sweeper if he's trying to queue out, and just make sure to pop your sweeper and see where he is going. He can always be hit with skill shots when he is deceiving in. If you see a little poof of smoke kind of from the bushes, you can throw out your skill shot. A lot of the times when I see that and I'm in bot lane, I just kind of throw out my Morgana binding in a straight line from that poof, because they're usually running in a straight line at you when they're low elo Shacos, because that's the quickest way, and they think they're invulnerable and they're stealth, but they are not. You can still hit them with skill shots. Next up, AoE is going to be a really big struggle for Shaco, because you can just kind of throw it on top of him and his clone, and his clone isn't helping him out at all. And then burst timing. This is very, very important. He has an invulnerability frame with his ult when he's kind of reappears after summoning his ult. So make sure you're using your burst after his ult, or way before he's going to be using his clone. And then also using sweepers on his boxes. It's a pretty obvious thing you can do to look to counter Mr. Shaco. And last up in this row, we have Shen. So he is a very tanky champion in particular cooldown windows. So do not look to trade when he has his Spirit Refuge up, and when he has his passive up that is used right after he uses an ability. So the timing that you would want to look to trade is right after he uses a Q, maybe to clear minions. He's going to use his shield because he procced his shield with the passive, and then you're going to look to trade on him because he's going to have less trade potential. It's going to be a worse trade for him. And then his W is a pretty long cooldown, so kind of taking a short engage and then using your mobility spell out, and then re-engaging on him is going to be a great way to approach it. He has a very predictable taunt line. It's usually just going to be straight at you, and you know when it's going to be a flash taunt when he's taunting in, and you see, oh wait, that's a really short taunt. He's just going to flash on top of me. This is when you need to look to flash out. He has very low wave clear. This is why they usually built things like Tiamat and Sunfire to give them some sort of split push presence. So look to see what he's building. If he's building Tiamat first item, he's going to be squishy and very susceptible to gank, so make sure to ping your jungler and let them know when that happens. And when his split push capacity, one thing that you can really do to cuck Shen, I played Shen for a while, and this was I hated when people did this. If you're able to burst out the person that Shen ults extremely quickly, if you're playing something like Veigar or Syndra, and you're able to burst through the shield very easily, do that, because it's going to take him out of the fight. He's not going to be able to come into the fight unless he wants to start his teleport right after his ult. And that will wrap up Shen. Alright, and let's get into the next line. We have Shyvana. Now, if you do not know this, I don't think too many people know it unless they play Shyvana, is she gets a lot of damage reduction when she kills dragons. So if you're able to deny dragons from her at all, this is going to be very good. Also, look to keep a ward around the dragon, because sometimes they are looking to solo them out, and you can look to kill her when she's at low health trying to take the dragons. Next up, she's extremely squishy when she is not in her dragon form and has less damage output. So if you're able to duel her when she doesn't have her ult up, which is signified by her bar under her health bar, you can look to fight her then. Next up, her E range in dragon form is insane. It is very long range, and it has a large amount of damage, so always be on your toes. If you think you're getting away from the Shyvana and she still has her E up, be careful, be ready to sidestep one way or the other, because she has a lot of chase down potential because it slows you and then also does a large amount of damage. Obviously, your dueling potential revolves around in dragon form, so sometimes you don't want to take those 1v1s. There's very few champions that can beat her. You can kite her out as she doesn't have a hard CC with things like the Kindred or Graves. She doesn't actually have the healthiest clear. Sometimes you can look to take advantage of her and look to invade her pre-6. She is pretty weak, so you can look to duel her then. And she's very ult-reliant in the late game team fights for catching you and getting into the back line. So always be ready to use your mobility spell or your flash to get away from the Shyvana, because she will be able to do a large amount of damage. Next up, we have Singed. I actually want to talk about something before we get into his kit. I want to talk about a hard counter that I think is very, very, it is not used too much, but is kind of a champion that I have not lost against. Is Singed. I've played 10 games of this champion into Singed, and that is Morgana. Morgana is extremely strong into him because you're able to black shield his fling and is not able to take effect, and then you're also able to bind him when he gets very close and really stop him from just running around spreading his poison. And then also your ult is going to slow him down and stun him, which is going to be huge. I usually take Ignite into him and just really, I'm able to control that lane extremely easy and able to kill him several times. So try out Morgana for yourself, see if you like it. I know it's kind of weird to play Morgana top, but it does work into Singed. He really struggles against CC if you're able to land your CC ability when he's just looking to run around with his Righteous Glory and his Ghost and all those speed ups. So he's actually, you should always be looking at his build, see how he's building. Are you able to burst him out? Is he building full tank with one damage item, or is he building a bunch of damage items? He's exceedingly squishy if he goes like Leandry's Rylai's and just more AP. Or sometimes you don't want to focus him if he's just going full tank and just kind of ignore him and going on the carries. One big thing that he struggles with is he has a very short flip range. It's very close to his model, so just be aware that you can kite him out a bit, and he has to get like right on top of you, almost on melee range to fling you. Bodyguards are very important with champions that are able to just kind of stand near you and peel. Things like Poppy, things like Braum, things like Ornn are going to be really effective into Singed and protecting your carries. Next up, we have Sion. So I'm just going to go over a couple quick things. I'm going to go through actually every ability, do something different for this guy. We're going to go through every single ability and how to counter it. Okay, so counter the Q. Just save your CC spell for when he's charging up your Q. Next up, his ult. Just stand in front of his ult, and he won't be able to get away. Or if you're a big tank in the team fights and you want to stop him from getting on your squishies, just stand in front of his ult. Next up, he has very obvious E pathing with where he's going to hit minions. He wants to stand directly across from you in the minion wave and shoot an E at you. So always look to not be in a straight line between you and him. And then next up, he cannot proc the second part of his W damage. If you burst out the shield, he's not going to be able to get that really nice trade that does percentage health damage on you. And the biggest counter to Sion is percentage HP damage, like Fiora. Poppy has a decent Q and can duel Sion at a decent level. And Darius is also a pretty good champion into Sion. So always look to get a champion with percentage HP. Things like Vayne also can shred him in the late game and are going to be very effective in Kaisa as well. So that it will do it for Mr. Sion. Next up, we have Sivir. So she has a pretty low auto attack range. She's extremely mana hungry. If you're able to deny her spell shield procs and she has to clear out minion waves, if you're pushing under a tower, she's going to struggle a lot because her Q costs a lot and her W costs a lot of mana. So just try and deny as much spell shield procs and you're going to be able to outduel her quite well. There is a sweet spot to her Q where she's going to want to hit you right when it comes back. She's going to hit you both parts like kind of instantaneously, so either crowd her or stay very far away and don't let her get that really easy two-part Q, similar to how Ahri's Q has a sweet spot where she's able to hit you with both parts very quickly. She is pretty weak early. She needs those 3 items to really start doing damage in team fights, and some hyper scaling ADCs are actually a decent lane into Sivir. Things like Vayne and Twitch are considered counters right now on the counter site that I was checking out, because they're doing a lot of auto attack damage. They don't really rely on abilities to damage Sivir, so you can look to take those ADCs into it. And that will wrap up Sivir, and let's go into Skarner. So he needs to be in melee range to do his ult, so he needs to get really close, get on top of you. So bodyguards are going to be really good, like Poppy, Braum, and Ornn, and all those people that kind of push away. And then also QSS, obviously, right? You're going to be able to get out of his suppression, and that's pretty much his whole kit. If you pay the tax, the fucking Skarn tax, you can get away quite easily. Next up, look at his build. Is he going kind of a squishy, like a Triforce warrior type build? It can be very strong in the dueling, but is going to be you're going to be able to burst him out. Or is he going a very low damage kind of tanky build? You can look to outduel him with some of your champions. So always keep an eye on what type of build the Skarner is going. He's very reliant on the level 6. He's one of those gankers at level 6 he starts rolling, so fighting him pre-6 and looking for him in the jungle can be a way to approach it, similar to Nocturne with the level 6. And then also sometimes setting up pylon traps when they're using the pylons to take scuttlers. If you're like a really far ahead mid or top laner, look to just throw a control ward in that small bush and set up a trap and get a kill on a Skarner that's looking to take the pylon and the scuttlecraft. And that will wrap up Skarner. Next up we have Sona. So, very, very squishy champion. This is her biggest weakness. She has a lot of strengths. I think she's a decent support, but she's very squishy and susceptible to divers. She's actually quite mana hungry. Her W costs a lot of mana, so poking her out a lot in the lane phase can be a way to drain her mana bar quite quickly. Healing reduction is obviously going to be very big, and then a lot of the times Sona's trading pattern is going to bring her into pretty close range, and this is a very dangerous situation for the Sona to be in because she is so squishy. So wait for her to run up and look to Q auto you, which is a decent trade for her, and throw out all your abilities. Make sure you and your ADC are shooting your abilities at her when she is trading, and this is going to do just wonders for you in that lane. Next up we have Soraka. So she is going to lose HP. It costs her HP to heal, so poking her out of the lane is going to be a better way and a more effective use of your mana and your abilities than attacking the ADC. Can be focused extremely hard with her poke. Also, just a small point about her kit, her E is an extremely long cooldown. I think it's 20 seconds plus on it, so you can look to take advantage of those windows where she doesn't have it up, because that provides her a lot of trading potential. Watch out for her early dueling potential. She's actually one of those weird supports that at like level 1 and 2 she's going to be able to do a lot of damage with her Q. That's an instant call down when she's very close to you, and then she gets a lot of regen health when that hits. So be careful of the bananas and her chasing you down with them. Do not disrespect the early game Soraka damage. And then obviously healing reduction is going to be very big into Soraka, and that will wrap her up. Okay, and let's jump right into Swain. So he is very ult reliant in his damage and trading potential. So when he has his ult down or he's pre-6, he's going to be in a relatively weak state. Next up, we have a mid-range sweet spot where he's going to be throwing out his E, and it has to get to a certain length and then it comes back. If you are about 4 Teemos, I guess that's the best way to visualize it, away from him, you're going to have an ample amount of time to dodge his E, and you're going to be staying on the outskirts of his Q, so you aren't going to have too many bolts hitting him. Next up, his Q early cooldown is actually pretty long, and you can look to do some all-in trades against him. He is going to be relatively weak in that situation. He's going to be very squishy outside of his ult, so you can burst him out after his ult is down. He won't have that healing, he won't have that bonus health. And lastly, but not least, always get some healing reduction against Swain. He gets a lot of healing from his passive when he rips out a soul shard, or not a soul shard, thinking about World of Warcraft, I forgot what it is, but the shard that he gets to enhance his ultimate, and then also the healing he grabs out of his ultimate. So healing reduction is going to be very big into Swain. Next up, we have Syndra. So she is very snowball reliant. She needs to get some early kills to be very effective in the late game. She's a relatively safe pick. She is going to be one of those champions that you can really look to abuse when her cooldowns are down, because she's very reliant on her E for all of her kind of getaway and her chase potential. So when her E is down, you should look to jump on top of her. Next up, she is hyper susceptible in team fights because her ult is not the longest range, so she's going to be looking to come up a little bit closer to the front lines, and she can be bursted out quite easily if you are a tank. One really big item that I think is great into Syndra is Adaptive Helm. It's going to be fully stacked up when those ult balls are thrown at you, so look to use that item when applicable. Next up, we have Tahm Kench. So level 6. I want to talk about his level 6. So Tahm Kench is a decent duelist if you're facing him in the top lane and or the jungle. He's gonna have, or not the jungle, the support lane. So when you hit level 6, he doesn't have a level 6 ult that he can use in a dueling situation. So always look when you say you're something like Brand and you get Pyroclasm, the amount of difference in power you get from level 5 to 6 is huge, where Tahm Kench's level difference between 5 and 6 is kind of small, so you can take advantage of that window. Also, he has a very strong amount of early and mid game power if you're facing him in the top lane, and then it's going to fall off a bit in the late game. Next up, he is going to require very good coordination. This is why I don't like recommending Tahm Kench to low elo players, because you need to have good communication on when you need to eat your ADC and when he is looking to go in. Next up, you can kite out his stacking system. You just keep a healthy distance away from him. He has a lot of damage that's kind of built in with his base damage of his W and his Q and the autos that he gets on targets with stacks on him. And next up, work around the gray health, popping the shield. If you can burst him out and CC'd, obviously that's great. But sometimes if he is not going to get any CC, he's just going to pop that huge shield. Just wait for the shield to go away, and then he's going to have a shitload of missing health. Next up, we have Talia. So she is going to be a strong duelist. She is very mobile, particularly when she can just run along walls, so be very careful. She's going to be a bit quicker than some of the other jungles. She's very reliant on landing her W, so try and move in unpredictable patterns, because if she lands that WEQ combo, that's one of the strongest combos in the game. Next up, level 6 power spike, similar to Tahm Kench, where they don't have a combat level 6 ultimate, so look to take advantage of those dueling situations when you just hit 6. If you're something like Graves and you both hit level 6, the difference in damage you're going to have from your last duel is going to be very different. She, after a couple nerfs, she doesn't have the same wave clear as she did if you're facing her in the mid lane. Sometimes you can even look to push her in, because her Q doesn't do the same amount of damage to minion waves as it used to. And then if you see her riding a wall, you can always hit her off. But always make sure, if you can, to throw a skill shot at her when you see her riding the wall, and that will knock her off and can throw her off her game. Next up, we have Talon. Very snowball line, one of those assassins that need to get those early kills. So play passive, make sure to get early Doran's item as your first buy, and then maybe even resolve a secondary tree to get that base amount of health, because he will most undoubtedly be running Ignite. Next up, he's actually kind of mana reliant. With his abilities, they are a little bit expensive, and his wave clear, so if you can kind of drain him of his mana, he's going to have very little threat. And then also make sure to ward properly. If you can, get some wards kind of in the path he would take if he wants to roam bot or top, and then ping when he moves. Also, hyperscalers are going to actually sometimes have a decent lane against Talon. If he's just looking to roam as much as possible and you're just running something like Veigar and you're just able to like stay under tower, it's going to be really good, because you're going to get a relatively free lane to scale up while he's roaming around the map. If you're the big caveat is if your teammates are being very cognizant of his roams. And then also you can pick champions that can follow him pretty well. Something that comes to mind would be like something like Aurelion Sol or Talia, or Twisted Fate, that can follow his roams. Twisted Fate can also see him in his ultimate, so there's that little bit of a bonus as well. And that will wrap up Talon. Also, very careful if his level 2 all-in is one of the strongest in the game, just because it procs Q, W, and his passive is just so much damage. He can pretty much burst out anyone if you're at 70% health out of the mid lane. Next up, we have Taric. So his cooldowns are actually pretty long, but how he modifies them with is his passive. If he's able to auto attack people, he can get a shitload of heals off, and he's going to reduce the cooldown of his stun. So if you can deny auto attacks from Taric, that is going to be good. He is also extremely mana hungry if he is spamming out his Qs, and they are quite expensive. I think they get to the point where they're at 100 or 120 mana. So if you're playing against him in the support lane, you can look to just kind of drain his mana when possible. Also, there is a large delay in his ult. I think it takes like 1.5 to 2 seconds, I think, is the ult delay before it goes on the teammates. So if you can burst them out, do that before the ult hits. Obviously, healing reduction is going to be very big against him, because his AoE healing is going to be pretty big. He can hit a bunch of targets with it. And that will wrap up Taric. Next up, we have Teemo. So He has very predictable poke patterns. He's going to look to go to his Q max range and throw a blind, and maybe if he's feeling a little bit more frisky, throw in an auto as well. So if you are a skill shot champion, you can look to throw your skill shots right when he is getting into his Q range. Also, he has no sustain built into his kit, so poke champions are going to be very good. The thing I love taking into Teemo, never lost Teemo lane, was the Urgot with Comet. Just a champion that can throw out Qs and damage him back when he's looking to poke you are going to be very effective against him. He is a squishy mid-range champ with low consistent damage in the late game. He obviously can build like on hit and do a good amount of consistent damage, but most likely he's going to be going the full AP build. He's going to have a little bit of burst on his Q, and then he's just going to have his auto damage. So just kind of burst him when he is looking to go into that range, and you will get a very easy kill. Sweepers are going to be great against Teemo to sweep out his shrooms and ruin a lot of his kit. Next up, you can do things if you want to pop his shrooms. If you play Zyra, that's going to be really nice because you can just throw a shroom or a plant on top of his shrooms, or the Malzahar bugs or voidlings can go around and pop his shrooms as well. Also, look to take advantage of his Q usage window when he throws that out. If he's even throwing that out to last hit a minion, that is when you need to jump on him because he is so weak when he does not have his blind up. And that will wrap up Mr. Teemo. Alright, and jumping into Thresh. So, he's similar to Blitzcrank. He has a hook, and he has an insane amount of threat when it's up, and a lower amount of threat when it's down, and it's a decently long cooldown. They did buff the cooldown a little bit, so it's not as long as it used to be, but you can still look to take advantage of that window when and look to harass him as much as possible when his hook is down. He has a high degree of difficulty to consistently carry team fights, so this is why I don't really like recommending him to people, because it's going to take a lot to perform at a high level on Thresh, and you're not always going to hit that hook and get that perfect combo. Also, he can be very squishy and can be turned on when he Qs in. If you play a champion that's kind of like a counter engager, if it's something like a Leona or like maybe a Karma, if you see him Q in on your ADC, sometimes the best to just kind of throw your W root on him or throw your CC on the Thresh when he goes in, and then kind of wait for the Aftershock proc to go away, or if he's not using Aftershock, just burst him right away, and he is going to take a shitload of damage because sometimes people are running the coin and they're not even running the Relic Shield. Baiting all-ins can be very good, and also when you see him following up with his Q hook, you can use your mobility, or you can look to like flash away when he lands it, and you can bait him farther away from his team if you are not getting stunned, if you're getting black shielded or something. Also, you can control ward or get on top of his lantern to deny the enemy champion of getting proccing the lantern, so make sure to deny that mobility to their team when possible. Next up, we have Tristana. So she has a little bit of a lower auto attack range early. Look to take advantage of her shorter auto range early, and then also she has an exceedingly large cooldown on her Q and W, so she has very large windows of weakness that you can look to take great trades on her. Her damage is very focused on her E, so if you're able to kind of juggle aggro of the enemy Tristana, that is going to be good because she wants to have a consistent fight with someone that she can stack up her E and do damage to. She has a backloaded W, which means that if she gets to a certain frame, she's going to have an invulnerability frame on her W that she's not going to be able to get CC'd when it is going off. Next up, you can, if you are at all able to, delay the reset. And she has a very delayed mobility spell, so sometimes you're able to burst her when she's just kind of channeling her W. And she has a very cheesy level 6 where it brings a shitload of damage at that particular level, but outside of it in the later game, it is not going to do as much damage, so just be cognizant of that. Now wrap up Tristana. Next up we have Trundle. So healing reduction is actually going to be very big against Trundle when you're looking to do all-ins, because he's going to get healing from his passive when minions are dying around him, and then also he's going to get healing from his ultimate, so that's going to be very big. And then also sometimes they build sustain items, whether it's Death's Dance or Bork or Ravenous Hydra, so healing reduction is going to be big into Trundle. He has one of the best duels in the 1v1, but with that comes very long cooldowns. On his pillar is a particularly long cooldown, and then also his ultimate is going to be a long cooldown. And if you're able to bait those out and use your mobility spells to get away from the Trundle and re-engage him, he is going to be rather weak. He is very reliant in team fights of getting near a tank and stealing the stats. If you're able to deny him with that particular situation, he can be bursted out and be quite squishy, and sometimes you can bait him into bad spots when you are the tank and he's looking to steal from you. If you kind of back off a bit and force him to be like really over extended, that can be a good way to get an easy pick. That will wrap up Trundle. Next up we have Tryndamere. So he is gonna have a huge power spike at level 6 because it obviously gives us ult, so you can look to gank him pre-6. He's one of the weaker champions because he's obviously going to be pushing in the lane a lot because he wants rage, so he's going to be autoing minions, and he must auto for rage, and this is a great way to deny him a lot of his damage and his crit percentage and his AD is by not giving him rage if you're able to poke him off at all and win those early trades. Some of his things that he struggles with is healing reduction, ninja tabbies, and kiting. So if you can employ all 3 of those or employ at least one of them, you are going to do well. Hard engage is going to be very good when you're seeing an enemy Tryndamere on the team, because what they're going to want to do is have him in a side lane and then have 4 kind of pushing and pressuring another lane. So if you're able to hard engage on the 4, that is going to be a great thing. And then also warding out your jungle in the lane kind of around where he's looking to push, so you can see when he's just waiting in a side bush and looking to split push even further. So that will wrap up Tryndamere. Next up we have Twisted Fate. So he is rather weak early. He has a level 6 power spike I want to talk about, similar to Tahm Kench, how we talked about it earlier. He doesn't gain too much dueling potential at level 6, so if you're something like Orianna, you're something like Fizz, you're something like Zed or Talon, always look to take the level 6 all-in on Twisted Fate as he gains no dueling potential. Always look to do those special wards for Twisted Fate where you're kind of tracking which way he's roaming to ult, so at least you can give your teammates a little bit more of a warning with pings. Scaling champions are going to do extremely well into Twisted Fate because he's a very weak 1v1 laning phase. Things like Veigar, I love running into Twisted Fate because it's usually a nice lane where you're not going to get pressured out and you can just scale a bit. Also things like Kassadin can do decently well into him as well. And then he needs to have access to the wave to regen his mana, so if you're able to pressure him away from the wave, you are able to starve him of mana. Next up we have Twitch. So rather weak early, you look to take advantage of him, bully him a bit. Something like Caitlyn can really do wonders and kind of get the Twitch out of the lane phase and kind of stop his insane scaling, because he's one of the hardest scaling ADCs. He gets so much base stats from his ult that he can get crazy. He has no true mobility, so divers are going to be extremely effective against Twitch. Things like Aurelia and Kled and Zed can really just burst out the Twitch before he can do anything. What you want to do against Twitch when you're just an ADC against him is take burst trades. You don't want to take extremely long auto trades, because once he gets the full stacks of his passive up on you, that Contaminate is going to do a lot of damage. Also, his only peel that he has is his W, so if you're able to bait it out at all, that is going to give you an advantageous situation, as it is his only slow. And that will wrap up Twitch, and let's go on to Udyr. So, no true mobility. You can kite him out to a decent degree. He's very predictable movement patterns. Usually when you see low elo Udyrs, they're just running in straight lines at you with bear stance, just trying to get that stun. So just throw skill shots in the way. He really needs to make an impact early, so if you want to play a little bit more safe, if you see him, if you think he's on the top side of the map, you can really deny a lot of his snowball potential. Late game team fights are going to be where he really struggles, because he has to be on the front line and can be bursted and kited out. Also hard engage, similar to Tryndamere, because a lot of Udyrs look to split push. You want to hard engage on the 4 when he is split pushing, and stay away from his dueling potential. He has a very strong 1v1 dueling potential. It's very common. A lot of people don't know this, but Udyr can usually win a 1v1 against a Darius level 1, which really shows you how much damage can come out of a Tiger stance. Udyr, so don't give him those early kills and that snowball. And that will wrap up Udyr. Alright, and let's jump right into Urgot. So, I actually made an entire video on how to counter Urgot because a lot of people are thinking he's extremely overpowered. But here are some cliff notes I'm going to go over real quick with you guys. So, very mana reliant. His all-in costs a shitload of mana, and his ult is 100 mana, and he has a very small mana pool at level 6. So, a lot of the times he's not going to have as much all-in potential as you might think. He has a very loud E lurching sound when he's looking to get that stun on you and flip you back. So always keep an ear open for when that is happening. His ult has a bit of a wind up, so if he's charging up a bit, make sure to change, go to the left or the right. Do not run backwards, as it is a very long skill shot, and it will go just right through you and be thrown behind you. So next up, we have anything that clears the suppression will get you out of his ult. If it is a QSS or an orange from Gangplank, those are a couple ways to get out of his suppression. So anything that gets you out of a Malzahar will get you out of a Urgot ult. Next up, he has very situational tankiness, and it's all built around HP. So base HP or percentage HP damage out of champions are going to be very good into Urgots, and when he doesn't have his shield up, he's going to be rather squishy because he doesn't have any abilities that give him any sort of tankiness outside of his shield. Next up, you can burst him when he has his ult up on someone, and there's nothing worse of a feeling when you're an Urgot player to die while you're trying to get that ult off on someone. So sometimes bursting out the Urgot can be a very viable strategy in the team fights. Next up, we have Varus. So he is very support reliant. If you can catch Varus all alone by himself and you're a diver assassin, he is going to be very easy to kill because he does not have much mobility. He does thrive in early game bullying and late game team fights where he's peeled for, but he's going to struggle a little bit when he is a mid-range champion. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle for him if there's a lot of damage that can be pumped out on him with his a little bit lower range. Then also be very cognizant of his blight stacks. What he's generally looking to do is put 3 stacks on you and then proc those with an ability. He is extremely mana hungry. That's why you see a lot of people when they do go lethality to get the tier, because his Q and E cost a lot of mana. So sometimes if you can bait out those abilities and get him at a low mana level, you can do really well in those trades. That will wrap up Varus. Next up, we have Vayne. So everyone, a lot of people know Vayne's kit, but let's go over it. So pretty weak early, needs a wall. Needs you to be close to a wall to win a lot of duels, so just stay away from walls. Pretty simple. A lot of the times when you're facing a Vayne and they're looking to 1v1 you, they can be baited out very heavily if you just kind of run away. There's nothing more a Vayne likes to do than chase you down with their passive movement speed. So sometimes if you want a clear shot at a Vayne just running straight at you and an easy skill shot hit on her, run away from her. See if she follows you because she thinks she's going to win the trade and she thinks you're going to just run away and you're just going to get auto attacked down. And when she's running in a straight line after you with her passive to kind of close as much distance as possible, just turn around and burst it. That's going to be really good. Also, she's in mid-range ADC. She's very susceptible to damage. Look for when she goes in and bursts her out, as she's a very high damage source, but a very risky pick. Next up, we have Veigar. Very, very weak early champion. He is one of the weakest laners in the game. So ganks on Veigar are going to have a huge effect, and you can take a bunch of lane bullies and really do a lot of damage. Things like Syndra and Xerath can really do a number on what Veigar is trying to do in the laning phase. He's very burst reliant in team fights until he gets that like 1 second W that does everyone's full health bar. But he kind of has a shotgun really in team fights in the early and mid game, and he only has one shot. If you can get him to waste that one shot with the Zhonya's, with a really big tank, with a big defensive ability, with the Guardian Angel, that's going to be a great way to deal with Veigar. He is really susceptible to just getting ran down by a tanky frontline that he can't kill. So if you have a chance you see a Veigar on the enemy team, a tank is going to be a good choice out of the top and the jungle. And while in the cage, a lot of really good Veigar players, what they're going to do is throw it in the center of the cage. This is generally where people are kind of moving back and forth as they don't want to get close to the edges. So try and go to the edge of the cage. Don't get in the stun range, but get to the far left or the far right. You don't want to stand in the middle. This is generally where they're going to be throwing a lot of their abilities. Next up, we have Vel'Koz. So Vel'Koz is a champion that you can actually crowd pretty hard. And what I mean by crowding is when he's looking to do his combo, just kind of get on top of him. When he ults, it's really hard for him to turn his ult to the side. If you have just a quick movement speed or a mobility spell, and just being able to get out of the side is going to be very good. He's very reliant on his E for his to kite you out and to do a lot of his damage on you on a mobile target. So just be very careful with his E. It's a long cooldown, so look to bait it out and then go in on him afterwards. Next up, he does a lot of true damage, so HP is going to be a good counter to that. And when he ults, he CCs himself in place. So if you have any high impact spell that can just be thrown in a certain area, you can wait until he ults and then throw that out. And then also you can hide behind minions when he is throwing out his Q. So next up we have Vi. Very, very predictable movement. She's going to be looking at us running a straight line at you and then just throw a Q at you. She's a very easy champion to hit with skill shots, particularly in low elo when they're not going to be sidestepping too much. She has a lot of early and mid game dueling potential and power. So you can always look to turn on her when you have a lot of dueling potential and after she has used her Q ability. A good way to actually play against Vi is it takes her a while to close the distance with her R. So if you have any mobility spells, if you can lure her deeper and deeper into your lines where there's more enemies around and the allies are still trying to catch up and she's just looking to engage with their R, sometimes a flash or a mobility spell to get her farther away from her friends is going to be a great way to deal with Vi. And also be very careful with the E collateral damage that Vi does. She can hit minions and still do the damage to things behind it, so do not fall for that trap. Next up we have Victor. So he needs a very good timing, back timing. One of his nerfs that he got that took him out of the meta, and he was a really high-picked champion for like an entire season, is he has an expensive back time. And so if you're able to pressure him out of lane before he can get an upgrade on his first back, that's going to be a huge win for you. It takes him a long time to come online. It takes him a couple items before he can really start dominating team fights. And then also, he has to come into mid-range. He's not one of those long-range mages that can just throw out abilities from a mile away. So when he looks to come and burst, you can counter burst him as he is rather squishy. He's very reliant on his W for burst. Save your mobility spell for when he places that down. His E is a very obvious skill shot. Do not get hit by the second part. It's going to be so much damage if you get hit by the second part of the E. So always, if he throws the ability out, it's just going to be an echoing spell that's going to E down the same line he just threw it. And then obviously he is an extremely mana hungry champion, and you can do really well against him when he always uses his abilities. Every single Victor player I've seen uses his E ability to clear waves, and it's gonna leave him in a pretty poor spot mana wise, so you can always look to take all in trades when he is at a low mana level. Alright, and let's jump right into Mr. Vladimir. So, mid-range mage. Always can look to take advantage of him from poke, from long distances if you are playing those sorts of champions. Obviously, everyone knows he has a lot of sustain, so healing reduction is going to be great into him. And then he has very big warning signs on when he's looking to burst you. Obviously, there's the red bar under his health bar that shows when he's going to get that empowered Q for burst. And then also his E charge up. A lot of times, how Vladimir's like to get kills in the early game when you are at low HP and he's around level 6 is just kind of charge up his E, not really near you, and then he flash E's in with his empowered Q, ignites, and then ults before all of that. So I forgot to say that. So always be very cognizant of that burst that's going to be coming out of the Vladimir, and when he's charging up his E, that's going to be a big sign that he's looking to flash in with the empowered Q. So if he has a red bar under his tag and then he has an E charging up and he's running towards you, should be a big warning sign that he's looking to flash and kill you. So always keep that in mind. He's pretty much one of those champions that need to flank. He can be CC'd and peeled pretty easily if he's just running straight through your tanks into your carries. If he does not have his pull up, so try and ward as much as possible, so don't let him get a great flank off. He has very long cooldowns in the early game, so look to take advantage of those windows as well. He needs to get a couple points into his E and his Q before they get those short cooldowns that everyone loves to hate. Next up, his pool actually costs a surprising amount of his HP. I think it's like 10 or 15% of his HP, and it actually still burns from Ignite when he is in his pool, so you can burst him out with that in the early game when he has a lower HP pool and he is looking to use his pool. All right, and last but not least, with Vladimir, if you can deny him access to the waves for healing, that can be a very good way to approach the lane, as he has so much sustain. But the only way to deny that is keep him away from the minions, and if you're a bully, you can sometimes accomplish that in the early game. That will wrap up Vladimir. Next up, we have Volibear. So, the only tankiness that Volibear has is, of course, his base stats are decent, but he has a huge amount of sustain out of his passive. When he reaches below a certain HP threshold, he is going to get a lot of healing. Healing reduction is going to really cut his tankiness to a strong level. You can burst through his passive sometimes if you're a heavy bursting champion. And the reason why Volibear never sees pro play or high elo play is because you can kite him out quite easily. Just wait for him to use his Q speed up and then use your slow on him. Also, just kind of a small tip, he's looking to get 3 stacks from auto attacking you and then using his chomp. Next up, his R goes through minions and will bounce on top of you, so he can look for AoE damage when you're running away. Stay away from minion waves. Do not let that chain lightning bounce on you and get him a kill. And he just really isn't the best champion right now. I'm kind of debated, like, just putting in a spot here where it's like, I'm not even going to give you any weaknesses for Volibear because he's such a poor choice right now. But we went over a few. So I would say rejoice if you see Volibear on the enemy team, unless you are a low elo player where he can do well if you can't kite him. Next up, we have Warwick. A small thing that you want to kind of look to do in the low levels, his dueling is going to be really strong with the sustain of his passive. But what you can do sometimes is kite him out, don't let him auto attack you for the passive heals, and wait for your cooldowns to come up so you can burst him through that little bit of healing he gets. Also, do not throw your burst into his E. It's a very obvious kind of thing where he growls and like a circle surrounds him. This is going to give him a lot of damage reduction. Do not use your burst then, use your CC then. And take him to a bad spot with your Q. You can sometimes lure him into poor spots. If you see him running at you and looking to Q on top of you, use your mobility spell deeper into lines and you can put him into a pretty poor place. Or if you have something like a lantern or a blast cone, to even get him deeper into your lines, that can be a great way of baiting Warwick in. Also, another way to bait him in is his movement speed from his W. He's always going to be looking to dive that low HP target. There's a lot of thirsty Warwicks out there, so look to take advantage of that. And also his CC, his ult is going to CC him as well, and usually people do not E before their ult, so you can throw a lot of skill shots at him when he is ulting and he will not be able to dodge. And next up we have Wukong. So he's gotten so many nerfs for such a champion that it was not seeing any pro play, as it's kind of sad. He is a bit weaker in the late game. He's stronger in the early and mid game. He's very burst heavy, weak, consistent damage, so look to take trades that are longer when you are trying to duel him. He's very predictable pathing, kind of similar to Shaco, and low elos, when they are invisible, they're going to be running in straight lines. So if you see a clone just kind of on the side of the lane, just kind of draw a straight line and throw your skill shots at him right there. He is going to be very squishy, or if he's going tank, he's going to be very low damage, so look at what kind of build he's doing. Do not clump up. This is what Wukong's looking for, is a bunch of squishies in a group that he can just all knock up and wait for his teammates to come and finish him up. That will wrap up Wukong. Next up we have Xayah. So very feather reliant in trades. If she is using her W and Q on minion waves, that is going to be a godsend, because you're going to be able to take very good trades with her when those two abilities are down. Her E damage is going to be pretty heavy in the late game when she's able to run a bunch of feathers through you. So just be very cognizant of these cooldowns. She doesn't have the longest auto attack range, so she's one of those champions you might be able to auto space with Caitlyn if you are a good Caitlyn player. She is very hyper reliant on her ult, so if you're able to bait that out at all, if you have a bunch of divers on your team, try and do like maybe something like an Alistar QWing in, and then if you're the Zed player going in, just make sure you're using your big ability after she's ulting, not beforehand, because she can outplay you pretty severely with her ult. And next up we have Xerath. So extremely mana hungry, and he needs access to the wave to get the mana back from his passive, or access to a champion to auto attack. Do not give him free autos on you, and he will just get a large chunk of mana back if he is able to. His ult roots him. He's like Vel'Koz and Warwick. Look to take advantage of a stationary target when he is ulting. And also a big thing that a lot of people don't understand, particularly I'm seeing this matchup a lot when I play Veigar, is I see a lot of Xerath into it. You are able to get a lot of CC on him when he is slowing himself with his Q. You're able to get a cage on him very easily, run up and get a cage on him because he is slowing himself. Look to throw out skill shots when he is charging up his Q. Also, the E is a slow moving skill shot and you just got to move left to right, and it's kind of, he does like a loud like fucking voice line when he's throwing out his E, so there is a bit of an audio warning as well. Next up we have Xin Zhao. So he's relatively squishy in the early game. The only thing that he has, he doesn't really have any kind of tankiness pre-6, and then when he hits 6, you just have to be inside the circle to burst him. He's very reliant on his E for a gap closer. If you can't kite him out, just wait for him to use his E and then use your mobility spell away from his E. Very ult reliant as well, and he can just fall off in the late game. He's going to be strong, really strong in the early and mid game, so don't try and duel him too much if you are not used to fighting Mr. Xin Zhao. Alright, now we're jumping into Yasuo. So, if you're curious, I've already made a video on this champion where I went in depth on how to beat him several different ways. I think it's like a 20 or 30 minute video if you want to check that out. But let's just go over a quick couple things we got here. So this is a degenerate player base. Let's be honest, Yasuo players are degenerate people, so that they got that weakness going for them. Also, it's very hard for them to hold in their autism, and they are going to be just complete gank magnets. They're going to be looking to go all in, level 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10. And they're really not going to look to just kind of scale. They're just going to look to fight as much as possible. They're just looking to play Street Fighter, particularly in low elos. They have very inconsistent team fights. They're really reliant on knockups, so look to avoid those. Also, very heavily countered by CC, Ninja Tabbies, Randuin's, proccing a shield before going all in on him in the 1v1s, and running away from minion waves. I know that was a very quick sum up, but I do have an entire video on Yasuo and how to beat him in lane. So I'm sorry if you're a Yasuo main. I just particularly hate that champion. I think it's the bane of a lot of people that are putting in a shitload of games and trying to climb, because a lot of the times, I don't know how many OPGG reviews I've done with like, oh, I have 300 Yasuo games, but I have a 52% win rate on him, and it's just kind of stagnating them and keeping them in low elo. So I think he's kind of the bane of a lot of low elo players, where they're able to carry a lot of games, but also they feed a lot of games. If you're curious on why I hate Yasuo so much. All right. Next up, we have Yorick. So his weaknesses are, you can kite him out relatively easy. He has very squishy ghouls that can be killed quite easily. He is very weak in the team fights. He thrives in the split pushes. If you have hard engaged, obviously that's going to be very good in the 1-4 setup of split pushing. He has very heavy sustain, so healing reduction is going to work quite well into him. You can also smite his ult. Low mobility, and if you're able to dodge his E, it's going to really ruin a lot of the damage that he is trying to output. So get used to waiting for his E. That's a pretty long cooldown, and trying to dodge that, as there is a bit of a delay on the reticule that is being thrown on the ground. Next up, we have Zac. So he is pretty weak early. Usually people are running Zac in pro play when they see a weak jungler on the other team. How you can look to take advantage of him is just with strong champions like Lee Sin, Graves, Xin Zhao, that can duel very heavily in the early game. He needs a bunch of levels in his E for more range and his ganking potential, so you don't have to worry about him too much at those early levels. He doesn't have the healthiest clear, and you can really want to look to ward out his flank engages. Also, you can CC him when he is using his elastic slingshot. If you run things like Poppy, you can W, or you can flay him out with Thresh. There's a couple different champions like that. And then you can obviously do a lot of AoE damage to his passive, so look to like kind of group up a little bit and then throw out all your AoE, and you're going to be able to kill that passive pretty easily. Losing lanes are going to be a bit of a struggle for him. He's going to want winning lanes to let him scale a bit out of the jungle. Next up we have Zed, another one of those champions. I made an entire video on it, so I'll just be very quick. He's very cooldown reliant. He's not auto attack based. He's just kind of ability based. So look to take advantage of the windows where he uses his cooldowns to farm. particularly when he uses his W. Early armor is going to be huge to stop some of his all-in potential, and then things like Zhonya's are going to be big to prevent his ult, and then bodyguarding is going to be a really good thing to prevent some of his combos when he R's in. Make sure you have your CC ready and your exhaust ready to counter his kit. Next up, we have Ziggs. So he's a bit weaker early. You can take kind of hard scaling champions into him, and you're not going to have to worry too much about getting bullied. He's very mana hungry, and he has a bit of a delayed escape on his W. You can look to poke him out a lot when he is just kind of throwing down his W and then bouncing away. Next up, you can run under his Q bounce, and then also his ult is going to be a very big reticule on the ground that you can use your mobility and flash out of as very telegraph damage in team fights. Next up, we have Zilean. He is one of the squishiest champions. Pre-6, extremely fast. A good way to deal with the Zilean in the late game is to force a bad ultimate either on himself or a champion that he really doesn't want to bring back. It's not their highest impact champion. Next up, it's usually good for 1 or 2 dodges on the Zilean before they get wise to it. They're gonna do a lot of, they're gonna do a slowdown with their E, hit you with a bomb, and then they're gonna look to get the double up bomb. This is gonna do a shitload of damage. Look to just run at him. Or just change your direction. If you're running at him, run away. If you're running away, run at him. And this is going to be able to dodge the double bombs a couple times before he gets wise. He only has 1 offensive ability, and it's very expensive, so he's a little bit mana hungry. And just do not clump against him. He's one of those champions that can get a huge AoE stun that can turn a fight quite easily. Next up, we have Zoe. So hiding behind the minion wave obviously is really big. It's going to stop him from hitting Qs and Es on you. Stay away from walls if at all possible, as this will make her sleepy bubble go longer. One of her big weaknesses to her kit is she has a guaranteed frame of when she uses R. You can throw your Fizz Fish, you can throw your Aurelia E right where you know she's going to be, and you're going to get a guaranteed skill shot on her. So champions with a lot of skill shot damage can do really well. My favorite thing to actually take it as Zoe is Ziggs. I just throw out my minefield on a return pad and then prep a Q and then an R. I just literally throw all my abilities when I know she's going to go back and just burst her out like that. She really struggles against very heavy tank teams because she can't really weave her E's and Q's through you that easily. And then also you can look to protect them when she even lands an E. And then also leaving summoner spells sometimes as a bait can be good. And she is going to get baited out by those balloon minion waves in lane. If you play something like Zed, we're able to jump on her very easily. Just kind of back off a little bit, see if she'll look to kill the balloon and pick up the juicy summoner spell, and then use your mobility spell on her and kill her. Alright, and last up, boy, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. We have Zyra. So she has really long cooldowns in lane. She is very susceptible when she doesn't have her E and Q up, as she's a very slow moving target with no movement abilities and can be bursted out quite easily. She's kind of like a shotgun in team fights. She has one really big, impactful kind of rotation that she can carry games with, but if you're able to dodge that, or if you're able to bait that out, or if that only goes on tanks, she's going to be pretty useless. She's very reliant on her seeds to do a good amount of her damage and have her trading potential, so do not just kind of run at her and let her land all of her abilities. She's one of those champions that you really don't want to test. I mean, she just needs like her tier 2 like support item to do a shitload of damage, and obviously the more spell paying she gets, the more she's going to be able to burst you out. A really big weakness that she has is her plants dying to AoE, so if you're very AoE heavy, you can kill her plants, even the enraged ones with more health, pretty quickly. And then also things like double tap on Misfortune can really counter her. That's kind of the biggest counter right now to Zyra is Misfortune, so look to take that when you're done. Alright, that will wrap up the video. Boy, it is early in the morning. I stayed up late. This is 5 a.m. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sticking around. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Yeah, as always, guys, take it easy.